Nice little bio here about Sharan. Sharan Paul is the co-founder and current president of Holding Hands Hotline, which provides 24-hour assistance to victims of violent crime in Stark County. She is an Air Force veteran, attended University of Toledo, where she earned her master's degree in 2019. Sharan is a published author and is currently finishing her doctorate degree. She's an overachiever. Anyway, sorry. When daughter Rachel was a victim of brutal robbery at work, it became clear that there was a need for advocacy and assistance for victims of violent crime. Together, they identified services and products that could benefit victims struggling to overcome the trauma of being victimized and created Holding Hands Hotline. Sharan is an environmental activist and supports the recycle, reduce, and reuse efforts daily, from using leftover bits of yarn to make hats and slippers for charity to creating dollhouses from cardboard boxes. Sharan is dedicated to reducing waste through creativity and imagination. All right, Sharan, you are an overachiever. It's all yours.
I never really thought of myself as an overachiever, but I'll take it. I'm so happy to be here tonight. Thank you so much for inviting me again. When I went to write down what I wanted to say tonight, I realized that so much has changed in our world since I last spoke with you. But I know one thing remains the same. There are still violent crimes, and the victims of those crimes still need the support of our community to recover. The types of calls to our hotline have shifted with a marked increase in calls from family members of murdered loved ones. The shutdowns and decreased working hours have made it difficult for victims to get information, find resolution, or obtain services in a timely manner. Many victims we see are giving up or not reporting crimes because it simply takes too much from them at a time when they're still struggling with the effects of victimization. The pandemic has a detrimental effect on victims of violent crime. I'm not here tonight to debate the politics, the controversies, or popular opinions of pandemic mandates, but only to tell you how it has affected the victims we speak to. Face coverings have long been associated with criminals, and victims of violent crime can suffer anxiety when encountering masked people. One of the most fearful aspects of a victim can be not knowing or not being able to identify their assailant. Carrying over to life after the crime, victims often describe a terrifying feeling of not knowing who to be afraid of and subsequently being afraid of everyone. Virtual justice is not efficient. With many courts and proceedings being conducted by virtual programs and telephone conference, the justice system has become even more confusing for victims of crime. Those unfamiliar with the newer technology can feel lost during a hearing and find it hard to follow, as the only images that are caught by the camera are visible to them. It can also be a daunting task to convey their actual thoughts and feelings during a victim's statement without being able to see their audience. For courts that are still conducting business in person, victims must enter the courtroom, even the building in some places, alone, with no support person allowed. Nervousness in a victim witness, because they have no direct support, can make the testimony less effective as they focus more on controlling their anxiety and less on the words they are saying. Releasing criminals early is never a good idea. Again, I am not here to debate the nuances of pandemic mandates, but merely to explain the effect it has on victims of violent crime. When news hit that prisoners were being released early in a response to the pandemic, our calls to the hotline increased exponentially. There were far more questions than answers. Will the criminals come after them now? Will our neighborhoods be overrun with crime? Am I safe? Using the Vine system to track movement and provide notifications for victims helped, but even Vine had a hard time keeping up when this all started. The needs of victims have not changed, but the delivery is definitely altered. Holding Hands Hotline attends every possible community event throughout the year to promote awareness for victims and raise funds to continue operation. Last year, that didn't happen. And it looks like this year, it'll probably be the same. However, we will continue to provide the best leads and information we can to every caller. And though it always seems like it's not enough, it is what you can do. It is what we can do for anyone who has been traumatized by violent crime. And I know you all have questions.
District Governor.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yes.
Sharon, what you mentioned Vine, what is that?
Vine is the victim identification notification system. Once a criminal is booked into jail, even a local jail like the Massillon jail, Vine takes over and tracks his movements through the entire system, whether he's made bail or whether he's sent to another prison. It tracks him the whole time he's within the justice system. It also, as he moves, or he or she moves through the system, they provide a notification by text, by email, or phone call, whatever the victim registers with Vine, and they notify them of every movement of that criminal. So they're notified if they get out of jail or make bail. They're notified if they're being moved from Stark County to Lucasville. So the victim always knows where the criminal is, which it can be very helpful, but the Vine system is and relies on updated current information, up to the minute information. And when they started releasing prisoners, and like we've seen through this whole pandemic, it's like playing catch up all the time. So the Vine system got totally overloaded and missed some pretty important movements that they didn't notify the victims. I tell the victims, call the Vine system, call it again, call it again. Don't think you're a pain in the butt or anything. Keep calling. So that's one way. But they seem to be doing okay now. It's just that when you transfer prisoners, one of the prisoners that was in Stark County was transferred to Cuyahoga County Jail for another hearing on another case. They released him on bail, and the victim in Stark County never knew because the Vine system hadn't caught up yet. So that's one downfall of the Vine system, but it's better than nothing, in my opinion.
So Sharon, how are you handling the pandemic? I mean, how's your job, business, or whatever you want to call it, doing during this?
How is Holding Hands doing, or how am I doing?
How's Holding Hands doing? I mean, how are people contacting you? Is it totally
Still
different?
by phone.
Okay.
Still by phone, sometimes email, sometimes a Facebook message, sometimes texting. The calls are shorter now. A lot of times it's, oh my gosh, I just got a notification this guy's getting out of jail. Or in the case of the machete, the guy who robbed all the businesses with the machete last year or the year before, he applied for an early release due to COVID. So we're seeing a lot of that now, and they want to know what they can do, things like that. And it's very limited what they can do. It's not like we can just go walk into the law library or the prosecutor's office anymore. It's luckily I'm still in school. I'm studying for my doctorate now. So I have access to the university law library, which helps sometimes, but I'm not a lawyer. So there's that. But when they started releasing the prisoners, you would not believe the calls we got. I think everybody who has ever been called to be a witness in a criminal case called us. And it's, I don't even know what to say to them a lot of times. And I tell them, I don't even know what to say to you right now, but let's start at the beginning. A lot of our calls have changed to the victim, to murder victims, their families. They might not have enough money to provide a funeral for a young person in their 20s, because whoever thinks a young person in their 20s, a healthy young person, is going to be suddenly gone one day. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of calling around to see if there are any church groups or any affiliations with military or whatever that we can find to help them, at least bury their loved one. it's hard to get reports. When I sit down with a family of a murder victim, the first thing I want them to do is fill out the victim's compensation through the state of Ohio to see if they can get help burying their loved one, and costs associated with that. A lot of murder victims leave young children behind, and there are a lot of expenses. In the process of filing for victims' compensation through the Ohio Attorney General's office, you have to provide them a lot of documentation. Well, we can't just walk into the police station anymore and get the police report or this report or that report. Everything has changed because, you know, people are limited to where they can go in person. So it's a lot of waiting around, a lot of frustration. But I can tell you that the local funeral homes in Stark County, all over Stark County that I've had contact with, have been very, very responsive to the difficulties and very kind to the families in helping them and finding different resources.
That's interesting. That's good to hear.
Sharon, when you say your organization sends out a text or however the victim wanted to be notified, how far, let's just say a person who still lives in a house with their parents and brothers and sisters, who all does that message go to? Just the victim, or?
Well,
Yeah.
when they originally, when you first become a victim of a crime and you register with the Vine system, it's done online now. It used to be done through the prosecutor's office, I believe, in years past. But you go online and you register with the Vine system. It asks you all the information about the case and your part in the case. And then at the there's one section that says, how do you want to be notified and who do you want to be notified? Usually you only get the option of one person to be notified. And a lot of times in the case of murder, sometimes the families can be scared, or a sibling can be scared that, you know, there would be repercussions or violence against them. So it's important that they be notified when those people are moved through the prison system or justice system. So I believe anyone can be notified on Vine.
Okay.
Hey, Sharon, this is Lion Bill. I saw the article in About Magazine about your organization, your start, and it sounded like it was quite an effort to get started, but you got a lot of help. I mean, North Kent Lions helped you out, and also other individuals. So about helping you, is there more than just you yourself and anybody in the group, or did you get other people to help join?
Right now we have 32 volunteers. Some of them help us with the outdoor events, because we were going to events 2 and 3 times a week throughout the summer and the winter. We have events too, community events. So we have some volunteers that help us with events. Those are mostly college students, because they're the ones that we can get, how do I say it, on their off time, because their schedule changes constantly with each semester. And I go to school with them, so they're afraid I'm going to be their professor one day. So they're always really nice to me. Which I'm not going to be their professor one day. I don't know why they think that. Then we have right now we have 4 people who answer the phone. We've all been trained through the Ohio Department of Justice in victim advocacy. One of our advocates that answers the phone actually came from a military background in a crisis center on a military base. So she adds a whole new perspective to the calls that come in. We also have different volunteers that will come and help with mailings or getting things ready. We have a whole raft of, I call them the grandmother crew, that does crocheting and makes little things for us to give away, so we don't have to spend any money. Walmart actually gave us a grant for last year and funded the entire $1,500 operating budget last year. So there have been some corporate sponsors along the way. But we do have quite a crew that email me regularly and text me on when are we going to do something again, and that's a good question. I wish I could answer that question for them, but
Me too.
no, no one can. I just tell them next week, give me a call.
All righty. And Beth, have any questions for Sharon? That blows. I never thought about the fact that they have to go into the court by themselves because nobody can go. And that's something.
You know, a lot of them, a lot of victims I'm hearing are not reporting crimes or are not testifying because of that.
Yeah.
And that is that's a travesty. It's a travesty of justice, actually. That's a perfect definition for a travesty of justice, in my opinion, because these are people who want to do the right thing. These are people who don't want this violence to happen to others and who want justice for themselves. And simply dealing with the aftermath of a violent crime, to have to walk in there alone, or even to sit in front of a computer when you know that other people are watching you, but you can't see them, or you see only what the camera shows you. It's terrifying. I can't imagine how that feels.
Yeah, I can't either. All righty.
I do have one more question. Why I'm Brian here. With the victims of the violent crimes, I don't know the law very well. Is there any kind of, obviously they're able to track with Vine, their movements and all that. Is there any kind of automatic restraining order that dictates they can't come near them, like around their home or anything to intimidate them, or is there anything like that?
That is an interesting question, and one that I ask on a regular basis. There is nothing in place that is automatic. However, in most violent crimes, the last thing I've heard judges say is, and there will be no contact with the victim, blah, 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 blah. So it's not necessarily a restraining order, but it becomes part of the order of that court, which is the same as a restraining order, I suppose. You can't go have any contact with that victim. You can't stalk them. You can't go after them or their family. However, that little bit that he says at the end where you have no contact with the victim, often that gets forgotten. There was a case of a minor who was abused by a mother's boyfriend. And when he was sentenced for that crime, the judge forgot to say that, or thought he said it. How many cases do they do in a day? You can't judge the judge. You can't pass judgment on a judge for that. When the man got out 15 years later from prison, that's when that child, who is now an adult woman, found out that there was nothing to keep him from coming right after her. She, in turn, had to go down and get a regular protection order for that. Usually, like I said, the judges are really careful about that. And the last thing they say in every court case is, you will have no contact with that victim. So I don't, but I do ask that question all the time. Why is that not a given? Why is that not automatic? And all I can think of is that sometimes the case, how many cases does a judge have in one day? That he thinks he said it. He's so used to saying it. I mean, I've made that mistake. Everybody has. When you're so used to saying something, you're sure you said it, when in fact, maybe it was forgotten that time. Right. But that's a good question, and one we should ask at every criminal case that has a victim witness.
All right. Well, Sharon, thank you so much for coming on, speaking with us. It's always a pleasure. And thank you for the short notice that you jumped in there and spoke with them. We really appreciate that.
Thank you for having me. I wanted to update you a little. Okay. The last time we talked, my daughter Rachel was with me. She was currently, I believe she was laid off. She had worked at a flag factory. She couldn't go back to the gas station or in any, public type where she would deal with the public. So she went to work at a flag factory, which was very small and protected, and was laid off at the time. She went to work at Walmart in shipping and receiving and did so well. She saved enough money that last year she bought her own house in Perry Heights, right by the school. And she allows me to live here only because I do laundry and cook. But she is doing very well. Very well. So I always use her as an example for victims, because at first you think it's always going to be like that. And it does change your life forever, but you can learn to live around that. You can go on and still live a full life. So even though Rachel is still frightened at times or gets anxiety at certain situations, she has done better. She's 26 years old and owns her own house. That's pretty cool. That's better. And hopefully she'll be starting back to college soon. She's been talking about college. So things are going very well. And there is recovery when you have the right amount of support. When you have a community or resources you need or products you need to make you feel safe or to help you go on, this is what can happen. You go on and you get better and stronger and you can achieve whatever. And I guess that's the message I would give every victim. I hope I give every victim, is that it sucks really bad right now, but it's not going to stay like that.
Well, thank you. You do an excellent job. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having me. Now, do you want me to, I'll sign off now? Is that good?
You can't, you can hang on, whatever you want to do. It's up to you.
Okay, I will sign off, and thank you for all the things you do for the Massillon community.
Oh, thank you, Sharon. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.